Oh, I forgot to mention, because the KTH requirement that the Priyanka's presentation will be recorded on Zoom. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Shangwan. First of all, thanks to Nikos for giving such a nice presentation. So if you were alert during the beginning, during the slides of Nikos, first few slides of my presentation will be a rehearsal, kind of a revision for you, so you can sit back and relax. Another small thing, so we will have 2 breaks. One will be after my presentation, and one will be after the discussion with Nikos. So if somebody wants to go in and out, please do so during the breaks. Otherwise, it can disturb us and yeah, just a small thing. Okay, so let's start with the presentation. I hope you all are excited just as much as I am to listen to the talk. So the title of the thesis is Efficient Trading in Short-Term Electricity Markets for Integration of Renewable Energy Sources, Multistage Stochastic and Agent-Based Modeling Approaches for Continuous Intraday Electricity Markets. Just as the title, the talk will also be long, so brace yourself. So let's give the background of this work. So the title of this thesis, so basically, as it says, it lies at the intersection of 3 important topics: the power systems, economics, and mathematics. Starting with power systems. So in any power system, it is important to match the supply and demand at all point of time to be able to maintain the frequency and at a nominal value for the safe and secure operation of the grid. Conventionally, mostly the generation side has been dominated by thermal power plants and conventional power plants, which are subjected to emissions. And due to the decarbonization goals, now the supply side has started to look different, and there is more variable renewable energy that is being coming into the picture. The problem with this, even though it's a great thing, there is a problem of variability that it comes with. So it's difficult to predict them accurately, well ahead in time, but it becomes easier to predict them closer to the time of delivery. At the same time, the question is that, well, actually the conventional generators prefer to plan well ahead in advance because of their physical constraints. But for the wind generation, as I mentioned, it becomes easier to predict them closer to the time of delivery. So this creates a conflicting situation. How do you plan the resources efficiently and optimally into the power system? Therefore, we bring economics into the perspective. So it gives rise to the topic economics of electricity, or in other words, electricity markets, which is the backbone of this thesis. So the idea is, how do we optimally allocate the resources in order to bring more value to the society? And how do we propose efficient market designs and rules into the market to bring more value? How do we promote more market innovation and promote competition into the market, as well as increase the cross-border cooperation, which is also something that we deal with this thesis. So the thing is, economics and mathematics go hand in hand. Therefore, we use mathematics to be able to achieve these goals that we just mentioned through economics. What does it mean? We use optimization theory, we use stochastic optimization, dynamic programming, decomposition techniques, and so on, which will also be discussed which are discussed in this thesis, and also in the talk. I will mention them. So electricity markets, let's come to the timeline of electricity market. This is just an example of how it can look like. So if we are at a physical delivery of this time, what does it mean? We can trade several years ahead of time, or up to a few months, or up to a few days, and that would be through the financial markets. It's called also forward markets because of the time it is located in. Now, as the next market suggests, day ahead. So it's like a market which happens one day before the time of delivery. After that, there's intraday. So it's like within the day of delivery, kind of, which is also something that we will talk in details. After that, there is a balancing market, which is operated by the system operator to be able to balance the system and maintain the frequency in the power system. So that is very important. After that, there's imbalance settlement. So imbalance settlement is not really a market, but more like a settlement stage where it's like a financial settlement for the imbalances that have been created. What is the motivation for this? Because, as I mentioned, the renewable agents, for example, renewable producers, they will not deliver as much as they have committed in the market, so there will always be some imbalances, mismatches. So it's like to penalize them, or to take that into account, there will be an imbalance settlement afterwards. So The main focus of this thesis is intraday markets, balancing market, and imbalance settlement. So as Nikos rightly mentioned, that the time when I started this work, there was lack of literature on this topic of intraday markets. So that was one of the main motivation to study this into details. And coming to the more detailed picture of what do I mean by intraday markets, and especially continuous intraday markets, to give you an example of this. So let's say we're talking about day D for delivery of like RT1. So this hour is called also delivery product, which is a term I will use quite often in the presentation. So the intraday trade for this can happen up to a few minutes before the delivery, which is called the gate closure time. And this actually starts from the gate opening at this time. So it's like a day before from 3 o'clock, and can continue all the way up till the gate closure. Similarly, the gate opening of other real-time products, like the delivery products, also take place at the same time. And what does this mean? This means if you follow all these blue dots, it means that you can trade simultaneously for all the delivery products at the same time. And this can be another instance when you can trade for all the delivery products at the same time. So this creates some complexity, which we will discuss later. And this is just to give you an overview of how it looks like. And to give you an example by what I mean by continuous clearing, I've prepared a small example. So this is how the market timeline looks like, the trading horizon. So if there is a buy order at price 20, so somebody is willing to buy at 20. But there is a sell order that is posted after a few minutes. Now this is a higher price, this is at 30. So this trade cannot take place. What it means is that these volumes can remain in the market until the next time where a buy order is posted at a higher price. That means a trade can take place. Now the buy order at 20 is still remaining in the market until a point when a sell order is posted, which is at a lower price, around 15. So then this trade can take place. However, this volume is extra, and this will still remain. So 2 megawatt hour is still remaining for selling, and then up to a point when there is a buy order that is posted at higher price. So then the trade can take place. So this is the concept of continuous intraday. That means I can continuously trade. There is no fixed frequency. Whenever there are traders appearing in the market, you can buy and sell. So this is very continuously happening. This is unlike the commonly known merit order dispatch, like the day-ahead market is operating on that. So there you will have fixed frequencies. You will have uniform pricing where the market is cleared, where the supply and demand curves match. But here it's different. And therefore, this is very complicated to model through mathematical modeling. And that's also one of the reasons that it was a field that was kind of like a bit left out, or needed more research. So again, why is it so important? Why are we talking about it? As I rightly mentioned, that it allows the producers, for example, renewable producers, to trade often, and they can act based on the updated forecast. So they can, for example, trade if they have more, let's say they have a better forecast than what they had before. So it allows the producers and consumers to trade more often to tackle their imbalances. Second, this reduces the imbalance cost also, and it also helps the system overall, because everybody can solve their own problems. Then it makes the life of system operator also easier to manage the system. So as Nikos also mentioned, that this topic is becoming more important because now we have a single intraday coupling, and this has been getting better and better. That means that if you are in Sweden, you can trade with somebody in Portugal all the way through a single market platform. So it's like a lot of liquidity in the market because of that. This also increases more complexity, even though for the traders, and that brings us to the next topic, which is increased algorithmic trading, because this makes it difficult for the human traders to trade often, because be up on the toes, because it's like so much data coming all the time, and they have to act very fast in the market as well. Therefore, we see this new trend in the market, which is also one of the motivation for our mathematical modeling, which we have done to support the algorithmic trading decision making in the market. So here is the outline of my talk. First, I will talk about the contributions from the perspective of the trader in the intraday market. Second, there will be some discussions on perspectives from the policymaker on the agent-based modeling. Third, there will be discussion on the system operate approach in the balancing market, and then finally some conclusions and future work. So to start with the research objectives, firstly, the idea was to be able to understand the trading trends from the price and volume data that we collected from the intraday markets. Second, to develop modeling frameworks to support algorithmic trading in the market, to support like optimal trading decisions. And then third, it was different decomposition techniques which we used to reduce the computational complexity of the models. Fourth was the open source agent-based modeling for the simulation of the cross-border intraday market to give more perspective from the policymaker point of view and the regulators to understand what is the implications of different regulations in the market. And finally, some mathematical approach to understand the optimal dispatch of balancing market in the balancing market, considering the imbalance settlements also. So to start with, let's go back to the market timeline where we are looking at the real time. So as I mentioned, that there is this imbalance settlement that will happen afterwards, and there will be some prizes. So you will be penalized for what you have not really delivered. And there will be prizes that will basically set like a motivation for the traders so that I don't want to get penalized. And therefore, what should I do in the other markets that I still have the time to act based on the updated information that I have. Therefore, we have balancing market just before that. And just before that, there is intraday market. So the first work that we have here is to understand the trading trends. And I will talk about this in details. So the price and volume that we derive out of this work is basically used as an input to the multistage models that are used in this proposed also in this thesis, and then there will be some agent-based modeling. So talking about the first work, which will be about the trading trends that we had. So just giving like short slide on the prices of the intraday markets where we have these candlestick charts. So the idea here was to show that if we look at this, for example, the first day, 15th January of the day, where you look at the price, like the maximum price reached at 200 euros per megawatt hour. So this was for delivery product 15, DP15. And at the same time, if you look at delivery product 20, so the idea was to show you how the price trends can look completely different, even though on the same day for a different delivery product. So it can be as complicated as this. So here you can see that the maximum price only went till 100. And then it can look completely different for different delivery products. Therefore, it is a challenge also to be able to model these prices and their stochasticities properly. Now, there's another complexity here. For example, in this curve, you can see these cross marks that you have here are basically the trades that happened on that day. And as there's no fixed frequency of the trades that are happening, they can happen at any time. However, if you want to use this information to derive some forecasts out of it, for example, if you want to do a vector autoregressive analysis, then you would need a price time series for it. And therefore, we convert this information into into price time series out of it. So these are some of the methods that we used: volume weighted average price, volume weighted average price with expanding window, padding forward, padding backward, and linear interpolation methods. So that was just something I wanted to mention. And then this was actually used afterwards in the rest of the models. So coming back to this overview model, right now we will talk about these two things, the multi-stage stochastic models and agent-based models. So to put this work in context, I would like to bring you to this slide where I try to explain this in two different ways. So the perspective of the trader, for example, let's say you have a portfolio of different generation sources, and then you want to participate in the intraday market. So here you are looking at, so this we have modeled as multi-stage stochastic models to support the algorithmic trading. And the second work is about market simulation. So if we have agent-based model in different agents that are looking at the intraday market, and then how does the regulator, for example, who is making rules in the market, so how does they react to this? So that is another work that we had to put this in perspective. And looking at the first work, so moving towards the multi-stage stochastic model from the point of view of the VPP. So here we do this algorithmic intraday trading decision making for the VPP with the portfolio of hydropower, wind, and thermal generation, and then model this as a multi-stage stochastic integer programming problem. And here we also propose some clearing models to be able to understand how much volume was cleared in the market. And then we finally do another variation. So we expand this to a cross-border model. And then finally, yeah, just to mention that we use stochastic dual dynamic integer programming here to be able to tackle this. And then these were the two works that we had on this. So to just give you an understanding of this. So what happens is, let's say a trader comes to me and says, well, actually, I know that you told me that I can trade multiple times in the intraday market. And I say, yes, but the trader is smart. He wants to say that, well, actually, I want to know what happens if I take a decision right now, but what happens in just the next time step, and after that, and after that. So because I can trade many times, right? Yes, exactly. That's why we say that, okay, if you're taking a decision at stage 1, you want to know what is going to happen at stage 2, at stage 3, at stage 4, and so on. But the thing is that it's difficult to predict exactly with full certainty. That's why we have scenarios, and that's why you see this to grow in size as we move further in the stages. So how do we model this mathematically? So these are discretized stages. To model this, we have a contribution function which takes into account the contribution from the present value, and then there is a future value approximation to look into what happens in the upcoming stages. Now, to give you an understanding of this, so this is the trader, for example, which has this portfolio and looks at what are the prices and market liquidity that we have in this market to be able to trade into it, and then whatever it proposes as the order, so it will get the order clearing based on the models that we have proposed to get a response from the market, and then it can trade again. And then we expand this model to different bidding zones. So here we use like the prices, what are available in different bidding zones in our model to be able to take these decisions. So the order clearing models that we've proposed here work like this. So for example, like this is the first one, which is immediate order clearing, which is like, if I submit an order, it should be cleared right now, otherwise I can eliminate it. And then the second order clearing model is partial order clearing. So it's like, okay, you can have some carry forward from the previous stage, and then we can clear the model. And both of these order clearing principles are actually based on the principles of the intraday market. So you look at what is the volume that I'm submitting as a seller, and then what is the market buy volume available. So that's the market liquidity, for example. And these are, by the way, the selling order volumes. We have similarly, if you draw like a mirror image of this, then that will be the buy order volume, buy order clearing basically for the VPP, which we have also implemented. So in this model, we have modeled this as constraints. So it's not like a different model that we have, but it will act as a constraint. And then I will explain this later in the next slides. So what are the key results that we derived out of it? One of the results that we saw was that the trading stages that we had in the model, they were affecting the rewards that you would earn. At the same time, they were quite correlated to the transaction costs that we had. Also, the performance of a proposed model was compared with the deterministic equivalent model, and the higher rewards that we had, well, actually, there was a trade-off between the rewards and of the deterministic model and the computation time. So the third insight that we got was about the cross-border trading model. So here, the volumes that were traded by the VPP were influenced by the trading prices that we had in the different markets, and also the imbalance prices. So now moving to the next contribution of this work, where we move to a bilevel formulation. So here, the idea was that the order clearing is no longer modeled as a constraint, but it's rather modeled as a separate optimization problem itself. And this is what allows more flexibility, and it is more accurate modeling of the market in a way, because it's also like something that has not been done before, because intraday markets, since they're continuously cleared, it's not like as simple as clearing the marginal auction, and therefore it's another important contribution of this work. And yeah, so these are, just to list the contributions first, it is a Bilevel model where we look at the VPP who has a portfolio of the thermal generation, and therefore here we also remove the drawbacks of the previous work where the technical constraints, for example, the ramping and the commitment status were considered, like, so the commitment status was considered as given, but here you can also change that. So that means that the thermal unit can decide to start up or shut down, and then there will be additional constraints due to that, which we have also been able to model. There was the lower level model where we have modeled the continuous clearing. So this is also, yeah, some important contribution, and that I will mention in the next slide. And then there is like, okay, so because of the lower level model having some binary variables, therefore we've also modeled the convex hull of the lower level model to convert the bi-level model to a single level model. So it's just trying to give you an overview of the bi-level upper level model would be looking like this, where you have a VPP and it has certain physical constraints. So then it gives its volumes to the lower level model where the market clearing happens, and then this output is communicated to the upper level model, and then this is modeled in a multi-stage approach. Therefore, it's like a quite huge model. And yeah, so there are like some like situations that you would have to consider while posting the order volumes from the upper level. For example, order volumes when the unit can be started up, or when it can be shut down, or when it can remain in the same state. So it is like different conditions that we considered to explain this order clearing. If you remember the previous slides where I was just showing you in a 2D figure, but now it's a 3D figure, because here you are also, the VPP is able to post their own prices, and the market also has their own prices. And then this is like an example of sell order clearing. So here it's like the priority will be given to the volume that is cleared with the lower level, or like the lowest price of the selling model, and then second is this, and then the third is this. So this has been modeled as an optimization problem. This is a simplistic representation of that, even though in reality, when we have the thermal constraints and so on, then it looks quite more complicated because of the binaries. And that is the reason that when we want to convert this to a single level equivalent model, so the KKT conditions are no longer sufficient. Therefore, we have derived the convex hull of the lower level model to be able to convert it to a single level, which can be solved then. And that is solved through stochastic dual dynamic integer programming to reduce the computational burden. It is a decomposition technique, as yeah, I mentioned before. So just a few insights from the key results that we derived out of it. So one of the important things was that we derived like the startup cost to be a variable in our model. Therefore, the unit can actually start up if there is like enough buying volume in the market, and if they're willing to pay the desired price. And there will be like at least they can get the minimum generation level to be cleared, so it can start up. The another thing was that even if, let's say, you have the same unit commitment status, then the rewards will be also decided by the day-ahead positions. If the day-ahead position was lower as compared to the situation when it was higher, so then the rewards can be more because you can trade also more. So this was another important thing that we saw. Now, moving to the next perspective. So again, this is from the trader point of view, but it is consumption side. So now it's like, okay, let's say we have William, who tells me that actually I have an electric vehicle and I'm not using it all the time. It's parked in my basement like most of the time. And then can we do something about it? Can you use it because it also has a battery? And I'm like, yes, sure. We can actually reduce the charging cost. But we also have an EV aggregator who basically uses his knowledge of market to be able to also trade in the balancing market, in the intraday market. And that not just reduces the charging cost, but you can actually gain some money by doing so, which we have tried to do through our models. So Here we propose an optimization model to be able to allow the EV aggregator to trade in the intraday and balancing market, again as a multi-stage model. Another important contribution that we had here was to reduce the computational time by another decomposition technique. So here we have used randomized progressive hedging, which is like a different type of decomposition technique. And then we have also accelerated it through parallel and asynchronous randomized progressive hedging. So this was the work that we had out of that. And just to show you a brief overview of this model, again, here it's an optimization model where the objective function looks like this with the intraday and balancing market profits. And then there are some constraints because you will also have, let's say, some charging requirements to satisfy. So that's also something that we try to take into account in the constraints. And then there is like, how do you bid and so on based on your day ahead positions. So that's also something that we look into. So the key results from this model were about the trading patterns. So for example, if you have like different delivery products that you're trading for, and then based on your intraday price forecast, you will be like the trading decisions were like quite a lot correlated to that. Another thing is that the arrival and departure times of the EVs were influencing the charging load posed by the EV aggregator quite a lot. And then the third is that the comparison of intraday and balancing market trading of the EV aggregator with the baseline scenario showed that it was quite beneficial actually to trade in these markets. And then the important thing was to show the different like reduction in the computational time. For example, when we used randomized progressive hedging, which is better than the conventional PHA, then there was already quite some reduction. However, the reduction was not as significant as we increased the number of stages of the model. But then when we compared this with the parallel and asynchronous model, then there was still quite significant reduction actually in the computational time. So far, we have been discussing about the multi-stage models from the trader's perspective. But now we will move to the agent-based model perspective, where we have more from the policymaker's point of view to study, to simulate the whole intraday market, and then see what are the implications of the different rules in the market. So here, we have like 4 different participants, like 4 different traders, and then there is the intraday market. And here, so it's like, okay, there's also, by the way, a market operator who is operating this market and continuously clearing it. And then they reply what happens out of this clearing to the agents, and then this market is simulated in this way. So these are the 3 works that we were able to present out of this work, which is like exactly. So this is how it looks like. So what happens is that these agents, they don't talk to each other directly, but they talk to each other through the market operator. So they submit their bids or orders to the market, and then the market operator looks at the shared order book, where you have compilation of all the orders that have been submitted, and looking at the principles of market clearing in the intraday, they will decide, okay, how many of these orders can be cleared, and then they give back the order status to these agents, and then they submit their updated orders, and this process goes on iteratively until the end of the trading horizon. So one of the main contribution here was to be able to derive like how do these agents decide their trading strategies. So one of them was knife strategy, where we just had like some range of prices from which we randomly sample the prices and then say, okay, this is the best price that you want to post, and then this is like there were some limits. For example, I don't want to post anything beyond this as a seller and as a buyer. So this was like some reference for deciding these prices. But another important work, since we also mentioned a lot about the algorithmic trading. So in this kind of a setup, to be able to decide the strategies, we use this method. So it's like, and we also improved it, therefore we call it modified trader adaptive aggressiveness. So what do I mean by aggressiveness? It's like, for example, if I am a hydropower producer, I have a reservoir which is full, I want to dispatch it anyway, so I would be, let's say, quite aggressive to, I don't care about my profits at this time, but I just want to get transacted somehow in the market. So I will be very aggressive. That means it is the third curve. It's when your aggressiveness level is 1, where you don't care about the profit, but you're trading like a lot of volume at quite lower prices, as opposed to another case where you're very careful about your profits. Let's say you're a thermal generator, and you don't want to sell so much unless you're getting a good deal. So then it's like, okay, then you would trade a lot trade not so much, but at a higher price. And this is like, just to give you a comparison of this. So what we tried to do here was to see if we have different proportion of strategic agents in the market. Some are adopting naive strategy, some are adopting this modified trade adapted aggressiveness strategy. So how does the transaction price evolve as a result of that? How does the market liquidity change, and how does it affect the final positions that are achieved by different agents in the market? Another important work was to understand the information asymmetry about, let's say, so you're in intraday market and you are thinking constantly about the imbalance penalty that you will be charged. So I'm trying to forecast the prices all the time because I want to minimize my penalty as much as possible. Therefore, my decisions at a given point of time will be actually inspired by my forecast of the imbalance prices. So the thing is that some agents in the market can have more information about the prices of the imbalances because they're also participating in the balancing market. And this is something to do with how the TSO also shares the information. So what we saw here was that this, in the case study, this was one of the agents who did not have good information, but all other agents in the simulation had. So what happened was, as we increased the error of the information available to this agent, the transaction prices were reducing, and this is a selling agent. That means it's getting worse and worse for this agent because it's not getting a good deal in the market, in the intraday market, because of not having good information, and there is information asymmetry. So this was something that we observed. Okay, another important aspect here is that you remember I told that, okay, you're able to trade many times and you have several hours to trade. So there is a wise person who asked, well, actually, in that case, why should I consider my ramping constraints from the very beginning of the trading? Since I have a lot of time, I can make a lot of money by arbitraging in the market. And we are like, yes, you're right. Therefore, we introduced the switch parameter, which is a user-defined parameter, where you can decide to ignore your ramping constraints up to this point, but after that you get more serious about your ramping constraints, and then you can start considering them. And this was something that is relevant for, let's say, the thermal agents as well as for the storage agents, because storage agents can also have this charging and discharging rate constraints and so on. So this is something that we try to study through some case studies. So for the storage agent, for example, these are two comparisons where we have at 30% we change the switch, and then in this case we switch it at 80%, so it's quite late in the timeline. So what it means is that in the first case, the agents actually, storage agents start buying quite fast, and at that time the transaction price is already a bit higher, and therefore it actually does not so good in the intraday market. However, if you compare it with the second case, here it would be switching at quite late in the timeline. So it would be like it can decide actually a bit better if it is okay for it to trade already in the intraday, or should it wait for the imbalance settlement. And that was something that we tried to study, which can be actually adjusted a lot in the intraday market timeline. Another extension of this work was to extend this agent-based model to cross-border trading. And then it's again very important if you have observed this third point here, because then you will have to start considering the transmission capacities, how are they allocated and calculated. So there are two methods which we have used here. One is the ATC, which is available transfer capacity, and the other is flow-based market coupling. So ATC is the one that is used in today's world. However, there is a move in the day ahead, at least for the flow-based market coupling, and who knows, maybe in the future also in the continuous intraday it will be implemented in the real market, but we have proposed it in our model, and through our simulations we have observed that as we update the transmission capacities regularly when the trades take place, for the ATC method, it's actually quite drastic allocation in some lines. However, in the flow-based, it's more uniform allocation over the trading timeline. So to bring this into perspective of the switch parameter that we have introduced, we combine these two perspectives, and then we see, well, what really happens if we have switching instances at different times, and then we have these two capacity allocation methods. How does that affect the revenues of the agents? And then we saw that up to a certain point, actually it was beneficial if you delay your switching up to, like, let's say in the middle of the trading timeline, then you are still gaining more and more profit, even with both the capacity calculation methods. But after that point, it feels like it's too late. And then the rewards were actually, the revenues were reducing with time as you switch more later. And then comparatively, at a later point of time, actually flow-based was better than the ATC methods. Calculation. And then this was just to extend the information asymmetry perspective to a cross-border model. What happens if you have, let's say, right now I'm able to forecast my own bidding zone imbalance prices, but you remember that you're trading now also with somebody in the other zone. So your prices that you will match with the other agent in the other zone will be actually inspired also by the prices of that zone, the imbalance price of that zone. So it's something that we have tried to understand from our discussions from the industry experts, and this is also something that they think about. So this is also some inspiration taking from that point of view. And then we saw, okay, actually, if you have better estimates in the given zone right now, and also of the other zone, then you, maybe the transaction prices doesn't go that high. This is from if you're like, yeah, in this buying zone. And then there is like, if you go on increasing the errors, then actually the transaction prices can also go quite high. And then we tried to do also some comparisons with different trading frequencies, which is then the thesis. So yeah, it was like, if you have more trading frequency, then this impact can be seen to be dampened a bit. Now moving to the last part of this, so looking at the system operator's perspective, where your job is to clear the balancing market, but then we talk about it in detail. And why is that? Again, because it's something to think about due to the more intermittent renewable agents that are also trying to participate in the balancing markets. So what happens is that there could be more deviations from the committed generation. So we say that, okay, let's see how does it impact the system. Oh, actually, it can increase the imbalance settlement costs in the market, and then it's also something to consider and think about. So the novelty of this work is that we say, well, actually, the system operator, when it's taking the decision right now in the market, they can decide this not just based on what they see in the market right now, but also like a forward-looking approach, looking at the next stage, which is the imbalance settlement stage. So then taking that into account while taking the decisions in the balancing market at this point. And this was the work on that. So looking at this optimization model, these are also stochastic models. So here we say that, okay, the optimization problem will look like this. The objective function will take the balancing market cost, but as well as the expectation of the imbalance settlement costs. And then, yeah, here were the decision variables, which was the up and down regulation status of the generators. And there were like 3 methods that we tried to compare. How do they perform if we have average imbalance pricing, uniform imbalance pricing, and uniform imbalance pricing with spot reversion. So if they are considered in the imbalance settlement and yeah, clearing, then how does it affect the total costs in the market? So these were some of the observations we had out of it. It was that to look at the, as we went on increasing the deviations of this one particular generator. So in the case study, we had other generators as well. So here is one of them where we tried to increase their deviations, and then we saw, okay, the costs were also increasing as a result of that. In this model, for example, the uniform imbalance pricing model. And then what does it mean? It actually gives the clear signal to the system operator saying that, okay, there is some problem in the system. Well, actually, if there is this generator who is actually introducing more deviations into the system, then in order to get cleared for that generator, they will have to somehow take care of their imbalances, maybe by using some storages or by using some other technology. So it's actually to give these kind of signals to the market and also to the system operator, as well as to the participants in the market. And then actually this kind of signal we didn't find so much in this AIP model, which is average imbalance pricing. So we found that also in case of comparison of the prices and the costs of the balance settlement, we saw that uniform imbalance pricing method performed better as compared to the other two. So coming to the conclusions, so in the first part, we saw that the multi-stage models, as we increase the number of stages and the computational time was also increasing, but they were quite correlated to the rewards earned as well, also the transaction costs that we had in the market. And then the second was about the computational times from the EV aggregator model, where we had asynchronous and parallel progressive hedging perform much better as compared to the conventional methods. And then from the Bilevel model, we saw that, well, actually, if the commitment status as well as the day-ahead positions of the thermal generator can affect the rewards earned quite a lot. And also, yeah, we were able to model the continuous intraday clearing as an optimization model. That coming towards the agent-based model, we saw that actually the trading strategies of the agents can impact the imbalances created as well as the profits earned. And secondly, the transparency in the market is very important with respect to the imbalance prices. It creates a win-win situation for the system operator as well as for the agents. And then the switching instances that we had that also impact the decisions of the thermal power plants quite a lot, and also the storage agents. So it can actually result into yeah, more profits, or yeah, also some different strategy that we proposed. At the same time, the ATC methods and flow-based methods that we had, so they can have like, let's say, ATC method has more drastic allocations on some line, and the flow-based has some uniform allocation in the system. At the same time, it can affect the cross-border capacities that are available in the market and also affect the revenues of the agents. Coming to the last part, so the stochastic models that we proposed for the balancing market clearing, where we proposed a method where the decisions are taken not just based on the fuel cost, but also based on the imbalance cost, the imbalances that they will create in the future, in the next stage. So that's something that we saw. And then the uniform imbalance pricing scheme actually performed better as compared to the other two methods. Yeah, so this was something that we saw. Actually, if you have observed this slide quite often, so there's this last market, which is about the imbalance settlement. So this is something that is also very important. And this actually, yeah, well, basically, the structure of this is inspired by the spaceship of the aliens from the movie Arrival, who gave the gift to the humanity to know about the future. Therefore, let's talk about the future world. In the future, there will be models to extend the multi-stage stochastic models and agent-based models across different short-term markets, including day-ahead and balancing markets, to give more perspectives. And also, there is, as Nick was also mentioned about the ongoing balancing market integration of Mari and Picasso, for example. So this will actually change the way balancing market activation prices are decided in today's world. And that will also create more importance to the subject of how do we decide the imbalance prices, and how are they affecting the intraday market prices. And also this will give rise to another important question. So in the stock market literature, this topic of whether at this point you should post a market order or a limit order is studied, but in intraday electricity markets, this is not yet studied. So we have proposed some models which came close to that, but then it can be improved further to decide at a given point which orders are to be posted. At the same time, the topic of market power is also very important. We have shed light on this topic a bit, but this can be explored much further in the increasing algorithmic trading environment in the intraday markets. And yes, of course, there's much more to it. So yes, we will maybe discuss this later. This is the end of my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka, for the nice presentation. So now let's have a 10 minutes break and come back at 2:10.
Yeah, since later you will have lunch talk, maybe you want to have some water. Yeah. And later you can have seats directly. Sit here.
actually there's something that I was not sure. Okay, I wanted to